What's up, everybody? This is your boy Clayton, and welcome back to the Chill With Clayton podcast on this Easter week. Today's episode is going to be about the story of Easter and the true meaning of Easter, but we'll get to that here momentarily. Folks, as you all know, remember that to subscribe and to like this show is free 99. That means it's free. It's gratis. It's free. You don't have to do anything. I mean, all you got to do is hit that little red subscribe button or that thumb icon and just go, okay, yeah, I like this video. And then I don't know if mine has the hype on it, but hey, if we hype it up, hey, then more people get to see the video. That would be really cool. If you're listening on our audio only platforms, that is Spotify and Apple Podcasts, give us a like on the show and give us a follow. And give us a rating as well. 5 stars would be an amazing rating if that would happen. But we also have the Chill With Clayton Instagram page, which has the daily Bible verses as well. I've been also posting just some sports stories as well. Recently, one of the big topics was just this past week with Jaden Ivey and the Chicago Bulls. If you want more info on that, I will probably release a video on my thoughts on that later this week on my YouTube page. It's just its own individual video. I made it yesterday, so I'll probably post it out sometime later this week. And you can learn more about what's going on through that situation. But yeah, I'll mention that in the show. We also have, like I said, we have the daily Bible verse, we have the daily music, pretty cool. Like I said, we got the stories on the Instagram page. We also have our Chill With Clayton Facebook group if you want to come and check that out. We'd love to have you on there. And I believe that's everything. Oh, almost forgot the Chill With Clayton email, chillwithclayton@gmail.com. If you want to be part of the show, have any questions, have any topics, let us know if you want to be a part of it. Heck, if you even want to guest host and let me know about that, I would love to have that happen as well. We got some pretty exciting things coming up. Really excited about today's episode as we are about to talk about the Super Bowl of the church, as my pastor calls it. Now, you might be asking me, why are we calling it the Super Bowl? It's called the Super Bowl because it's one of the biggest and most important events in the calendar for Christians. It's the story of Easter. And why we're even here and what the hope for this world is, well, folks, let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Easter. All right, folks. So to start off with this Easter story, I want to talk about the timeline we're going to be kind of going through. We're going to start on Palm Sunday, and we're going to end on, of course, Resurrection Sunday. We're going to end with that. So we'll start that off real fast. Something that is not in my notes is a quick little tidbit for the kids. There are many an Easter Carol, or there's some different videos about the resurrection and the crucifixion and Palm Sunday and all of that for more family style watching videos. I recommend the Minnow, like I said in one of my episodes earlier, Saddleback Kids, and Easter Carol, which is the Veggie Tales version of Easter, their story of Easter, through Mr. Nezer, who owned the chocolate factory and all that kind of stuff. They kind of have the Easter story, but it's kind of told like in a Christmas Carol type fashion. If you under what I'm talking about, maybe I'll do a full review of it. I would love to do that because it is a great Easter special. There's also a couple of movies. I know Angel Studios made like The King of Kings. That is a big one that talks about, Jesus's whole story. So if you want to, listen to those. And then, of course, if you want to go for a 4-hour movie, hey, y'all got the 10 Commandments. And then for the older audience, probably The Passion of the Christ is the other big one. The Chosen would also be another one that I think would also work for maybe an older older audience if you have like a teenager or whatever. But if you have kids, I recommend Minnow, Saddleback, and the Easter Carol. That are the big ways to learn about the story that we're going to be talking about today. So, we're going to start this thing off with Palm Sunday, which is the triumphal entry into Jerusalem on the donkey through from Jesus. So Jesus comes riding into Jerusalem on a donkey, out of all things. You might be going like, or as Donkey would say in Shrek, a noble steed. Yeah, he rode a noble steed. So there you go. A quick little Shrek reference there for you. But in seriousness in this, he comes riding in on the donkey. You have this whole big crowd, and I mean, I'm talking a huge crowd in Jerusalem, and they're waving the palm leaves, and they're going shouting Hosanna. The children are worshiping. Everybody else is worshiping. It's like, man, it is so cool to see what is going on at the time, and just seeing the whole just landscape, and you're just going through it. Now, continuing on, there were some Greeks that were even there in attendance at this time. By the way, if you want to know all the passages, I will let you know for the triumphal entry of Jesus riding on the donkey. That's going to be Matthew 21, 1 through 11, Mark 11, 1 through 10, Luke 19, chapter 28 through verses 28 through 44, and John 12, 12 through verse 18. Some Greeks seeing Jesus, that is specifically in the book of John, that is in John chapter 12, 20 through 28. Jesus also wept over Jerusalem, which I'll get into that here in just a second. But that happens in Luke chapter 19, verses 41. Why is Jesus in this time in Jerusalem? Because he's about to enter the temple, which that gets going in Mark chapter 11, verse 11. And he's also returning to Bethany at this time, which is also Mark chapter 11, 11, and Matthew 21, verse 17. So now we get into the second part of the Palm Sunday and the Monday experience here of the Holy Week. Jesus starts to clear the temple. Yeah, and what I mean by that was I do believe that was when he flipped the tables, because there were people out there in the temple just going out and selling stuff. I mean, they were just going out there and doing like big time prices on everything for sacrifices, and just saying, hey, we're just going to sell them off to the people. And Jesus, he was not happy at all. He was livid that they were doing this. He was livid. I mean, he goes out and cleanses the whole temple. He runs all these salesmen right out of the temple. And you might be asking me, why in the world would he do that? He wanted to keep the Lord's house holy. Now, if you want to learn more about this, that's Mark chapter 11, verses 12 through 17, Matthew 21, verses 12 through 19, and specifically on the cleansing of the temple, that is Luke chapter 19, 45 through 46. Now, at this time, he's also there with his 12 disciples who are seeing this all go down. That happens in Mark chapter 11, verse 19. Now we get into the second part of him after he cleansed the temple and cursing, to begin the cursing of the fig tree. His disciples are outside the temple and they see this withered old fig tree in their return. And they're like, okay, what happened to this tree? And Jesus, of course, uses this as very much as a kind of a comparison kind of thing. Now you might be asking me, why in the world did Jesus curse a fig tree? Like, what did the fig tree do? Well, let me tell you why he cursed that fig tree. At this time, that fig tree had not produced any fruit. And what this is symbolism to Jesus going like, okay, you haven't produced any fruit. What can I do with you? What can I do with you? Like, what can I literally do with you? What can I do with you? And it's symbolism to a real life. When you're not producing fruit, what is Jesus going to be able to do with you? You're pretty much just going to be sitting on the sidelines because you're not going out and producing fruit. So what does Jesus do since, well, this fig tree is pretty much useless? He goes ahead and curses it, and all the roots are withered, the tree just dies, and I mean, that's what happened. And you're going like, man, that's a little harsh, but if you talk about it in the aspect of what's going on here, I mean, Jesus just saw that he had a purpose for the tree, but the tree wasn't living out the purpose because something happened, and he went ahead and just said, hey, all right, let's bygones be bygones on that. Also at this time, that could create some controversy in the temple, which is in Matthew 21, 23 verses, through chapter 23, verse 39. You can also read that in Mark chapter 11, verses 27 through 44. Luke chapter 20, verses 1 through chapter 21 through verse 4. There was also some Olivet discourse on the return of Bethany. That happens in Matthew chapter 24, verse 1 through chapter 25 through verse 46. Mark chapter 13, verses 1 through 37. And Luke chapter 21, verse 5 through 36. He also continued a daily teaching in the temple at this time until we get into Wednesday and Thursday when the story of Jesus starts to hit the rising action a little bit more. And then this is after Jesus would healed Lazarus. And the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees see this and they're like, wait, this happened. This can't be happening. This is a threat to our power. This man is going out and saying that he's the Christ, but he's doing stuff that is not intact with our laws. And he's saying that there's going to be this new set of laws, a new set of everything, and he's going up against our power. So what does the Sanhedrin decide to do? They decide that, yeah, they're going to put Jesus, they're going to, kill him. They're going to put him to death. And this happens in Matthew 26, verses 3 through 5, Mark chapter 14, 1 through verse 2, and Luke chapter 21, 1 through verse 2. We're also getting into the preparations of the Last Supper, which we will talk about here in just one moment. That is Matthew 26, verses 17 through 19, Mark chapter 14, 12 through verse 16, and Luke chapter 22, verses 14 through 30. All right, folks, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this story right now. All right, so before I forget, I wanted to quickly clarify on the Olivet discourse that is mentioned right before the Sanhedrin plot to kill Jesus. What that was is the prophecy that he talked about on the Mount of Olives, talking about the end times, his second coming, the destruction of the Jerusalem temple that happens, the second heaven. That's what he's talking about in there. So just in case if anyone, I kind of forgot to kind of explain that. So that's what that's meaning on the Olivet discourse. But moving on now to the Last Supper. Now, I think a lot of y'all know about what went down at the Last Supper, with Jesus washing the disciples' feet, Peter feeling not worthy of his feet being washed at this time. You have the what is now the Passover, which we had Palm Sunday at church with grape juice and the bread, or wine in this case, and taking the cup. When he takes the cup and he blesses it, he mentions the bread as his broken body, which is just continuing to allude about what's about to happen in this next 24 to 48 hours, which is some of the most pivotal pieces of human history about to come up. This is what's about to happen, folks. This is very pivotal to the human race here in a few moments. So, talking about the Last Supper, like I said, you have the disciples kind of meeting up with all together. If you want to read about the Last Supper, that is in Matthew chapter 26, verses 20 through 35, Mark 14, verses 17 through 26, Luke chapter 22, 14 through 30. You also had the Upper Room Discourse, which was the talks in the Upper Room. That was between, I believe, Mary and Jesus's mom. I believe John was also up there along with Peter. Some of his closest compadres were all up there as he was kind of mentioning about what's about to happen. Um, you have that in John chapter 13 verses 1 through chapter 17 verses 26. So now we're kind of advancing a couple hours later. You have Jesus entering the Garden of Gethsemane, where he is starting to realize that, yeah, this is coming. The death is coming. And you see the human side because Jesus was fully God and fully man. And at this time, Jesus is starting to realize, I mean, we're getting close to like what's about to happen. We're getting close to the resurrection. We're getting close to the crucifixion, excuse me, but we're also getting very close to the resurrection as well. And Jesus is starting to realize, okay, like, the time is coming. The time is coming for me to officially take care of this business and get this thing finished. And if you want to read about what happens in the Garden of Gethsemane, that's Matthew 26, verses 36 through 56, Mark chapter 14, verses 32 through 52, Luke chapter 22, verses 39 through 53, and then getting more specifically onto the arrest and betrayal of Jesus, which is through Judas, which at the Last Supper, Jesus goes, okay, Judas, you do what you need to do because someone's going to betray me. Even though he didn't say Judas specifically, and all the other disciples are going like, oh my gosh, who's going to, who's going to betray him? Who would do such a thing? And then Judas goes out and does what he planned to do. And that's what the end plan was for him. And you get into that. You talk about with Peter denying Jesus 3 times when he cut off the ear of one of the Roman soldiers to protect Jesus and going like, hey, don't get like, I mean, things are getting real tense as we're getting into the Garden of Gethsemane. That's when he had, like, when he was sweating blood. This is big time stuff about to happen in this moment. And so now you're getting the arrest of an innocent man who was known as the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I mean, you see most of the citizens are praising this because they see this is contrary to their teaching. But at the time, the Romans and the Jewish trials, which we're about to talk about right now, the Romans and the Jews, there's nothing you can really put any evidence on. And that's what Annas, in John chapter 18, verses 13 through 24, they know this guy is an innocent man. So they're trying to think, okay, how do we do this trial? How does this thing go down? Then you also have, he enters before Caiaphas. And by the way, this is the Jewish trials. And some of the Sanhedrin at this time. This is Matthew 26, 57 through 75, Mark 15, 53 through 72, Luke chapter 22, 54 through 65, and John chapter 18, 19 through 24. Then in front of the entire Sanhedrin in Matthew 27 verses 1 through 2, Mark 15, 1, and Luke chapter 22, 66 through 71. So we're going through this. And Jesus gets through these side. Now we're getting into the Roman trials. This is where Pilate's going to be mentioned. This is where King Herod also gets in to the action here. This is where the Roman trials begin with it before Pilate. This is Matthew 27 verses 2 through 26, Mark chapter 15 verses 2 through 15, Luke chapter 23 verses 1 through 25, and the second time he goes before Pilate is in John chapter 18, 28 through chapter 19 verse 6. Then before Herod, this is only specifically in Luke chapter 23 verses 6 through 12. So Jesus is going through this, and this is also when Barabbas is mentioned in this fun, where you have the crowd and the Roman government asks the crowd, they're like, okay, who should we release? Are we going to release Jesus or are we going to release Barabbas? And the crowd goes, we want Barabbas to be free. And if you all know what Barabbas is, he was a criminal at this time. Barabbas was a criminal, but there's also something quite interesting about the whole thing with Barabbas as well, because in the meaning of his name is son of a father, which is really interesting because who is also the son of the Father? Jesus. Just saying, this is where it gets really interesting. And then we get in to some of the most pivotal hours of human history, the crucifixion. As you see, and I mean, there are many different ways. Like I said, the Passion of the Christ, the Chosen, and I'm going to try to be not as detailed as I can be, but this is very big. Now, we have the big things that happen. We have Jesus getting the crown of thorns on his head. They get the 99 lashes, because if he did 100, that would have killed him. 99, it was just right on the edge. Right on the edge. He also has to carry the cross. He gets in fine robe linen because he was called the king of the Jews. He was called the King of Kings, and this is why they're mocking him. They're mocking him with that robe and that crown. They're mocking him with that. So we're getting into the big piece of the pie right now. Then you have him carrying the cross out. And by the way, the time that this happened is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Good Friday. That's when this all went down, folks. This is when it all went down. And if you want to read more, it's Matthew chapter 27, verses 27 through 54. Mark chapter 15, verses 26 to 39. Luke chapter 23, verses 26 through 49. And John chapter 19, verses 16 through 37. Now, getting more into it, I'll talk about this more as we go into our daily Bible verse here in just a few moments. But this is, at this time, when Jesus is up on the cross. He's up on the cross at this time. And we're about to get into the death when he takes on all the sin in the world. And folks, at this time, this was one of the most darkest days in human history. There is some events in effect to the death of Christ. There was complete darkness. I mean, there is complete darkness. So, because this is one of the most scariest and terrifying times that have happened in human history. There's also the veil. This is mentioned in Matthew 27, verses 45 and 51. There was an earthquake that went down because the event that most symbolizes human history and is the most pivotal to human history, this shakes the earth, folks. And then there's also the confession from one of the guards going like, okay, this guy's Jesus. This guy's Jesus. We just killed Jesus. And this all happens in Matthew 27, verses 51 through 54. Folks, I'll talk some more here in a moment. Let's get into the daily Bible verse. All right, so folks, we're going to finish up this story here in just a moment. But real quick, I wanted to talk about the verse of the day, which is a very pivotal verse to this saying. We're also going to talk about the last 7 sayings that Jesus said on the cross when the crucifixion went down. I actually listened to my pastor talk about it this Sunday at our church. A very good message. I really appreciated just kind of learning more about what the final sayings of Jesus were at that time. And it's like very pivotal and very profound of what he said. But the verse that we're going to be talking about today is 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 24. And it says this: He himself, by the way, we're talking about is Jesus. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds, you have been healed. Now, folks, this is one of the most pivotal weeks in the Christian calendar. And now you might be asking me, but like Easter is like, isn't it about hunting eggs? And yeah, I know for kids, they go out and hunt eggs and you have a lot of candy and all that. But ladies and gentlemen, this Easter is very interesting to say the least, because you have a current revival going around in Gen Z. You have a very big crowd that's up against politics, against Christianity in there. You have persecution going down in Nigeria and the Middle East that is happening. Like I said, the whole thing with Jaden Ivey that just happened, with him getting released from the Chicago Bulls due to comments he made on the LGBTQ community, but at this time he was, going for like saying that it was how do I say it, that it was unrighteous because yeah, and there is some things, and I can talk more about that in the video, and you'll see that later this week. But getting into that, let's talk about the verse of the day, for example, because Jesus had to do this. This had to be done. When Adam and Eve first sinned, and when Eve ate of the apple, and Adam didn't protect her of that, that's when sin entered the world, ladies and gentlemen. That's when the backup plan had to be made. And God already had a backup plan already set in motion, and that was his son, Jesus Christ. And at this time, and I'm going to talk about the 7 sayings of what Jesus had. First up, we have a forgiving word. It was of forgiveness. This is from Luke chapter 23, verse 34. I'm going to read it to y'all real fast because I think it's just very pivotal of what's going on right now. And Jesus said, and this is to the criminal that is on the other side of him on the cross, who at this moment is about to die with another guy on the other side, but he realizes that Jesus, this guy he's the real deal. This is the guy that they've been prophesying about in Isaiah and in the Old Testament. He goes, Jesus, remember me when you enter the kingdom. And Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. This guy was a criminal at the time. He didn't get baptized. He hadn't gone to church. He hadn't read his Bible probably. He hadn't gone on worship songs. He wouldn't have gone on a mission yet. But Jesus still told him, truly I tell you, you will be with me in paradise. So you can imagine up in heaven, they're going like, okay, what are you doing here? I kind of didn't expect it. I just said, remember me to the guy next to me on the cross, that he would come to his kingdom. And he told me that he will be with me in paradise. And then you can just imagine one of the people at the heaven's gate going like, oh, that was him who sent you. Oh, well, then come on in. And he's probably going like, what? How did I get here? You know what I mean? And I mean, that's what happened. It's so interesting to see that. Then in then our second one is the saving word, which I just talked about in Luke chapter 23, verse 34. He forgives the criminal on the cross. He forgives us of all of our sins. And that's why we have the ticket to be with him in paradise, because we followed his plan and we have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Then he talks about his family. Remember, Jesus is fully God and fully man. He had a mom named Mary who's seeing her son getting crucified up on a cross. He's got nails going through his body. He's got a whole he is beaten up at this time. And Jesus says to her in Luke and John chapter 20 verses 19, chapter 19 to verses 26 through 27, he mentions about John in this case to his mother Mary. This is when Jesus said right here, he says, He says, here we go. Okay, here we go. He said, when Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, woman, here is your son. And to the disciple, which is John, he goes, here is your mother. And from that time on, the disciple took her into his home. Jesus had a plan for his mom. He was not going to desert his mom because of this thing he had to do. He told John to step up, and John stepped up to, look over. And after Mary, after just all the trauma she's seen with seeing her son crucified up on a cross, but it's for the mission of this world, and he knew he had to do that. Then the next one is the anguish or the terrifying word, and that's in Matthew chapter 27, verse 45. And this, folks, man, when I listened to this on Sunday morning, it put a shiver down my spine. It says here, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness had came out all over the land. And about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? At this time, this is when Jesus took all of the sin that you had ever done. And remember, sin cannot enter into heaven. It cannot enter in there. God is against sin. And when he sees his son that bore all the sin, he has to look away and has to go through this full plan here in the crucifixion and looking at his son that has every sin that has ever been committed in this entire world and will be in the future and the past. He sees that happening right in front of it, and that's why it is such a dark moment, because Jesus knows at this time God is against him. It's like, wow, man, like I said, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm reading it right now. Now, next up, we talk about the humanizing word, which is in Hebrews chapter 4 through 15. I know there's a lot of verses I'm going through this, folks, but this is really, really important, folks. So keep listening, and I know it's going to be a long episode, but oh well. In Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, it says, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we do have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. That is talking about Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus relates to what you're going through. He sees what you're going through. He knows what you're going through. And he humanizes with it. Folks, whatever you've done in the past, it has been paid for. It is finished. And that's what it talks about in Colossians chapter 2, verse 14, which is the amazing news that we can all have as followers in a relationship with Jesus, being sons and daughters of the King. It says here in Colossians chapter 2, verse 14, having canceled the charge of our legal indebtedness, which stood against us and condemned us, he has taken it away, nailing it to the cross. Folks, whatever you've done in the past, it's finished. It is gone. It has been paid for. Jesus paid for it on the cross, ladies and gentlemen. He paid for it. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. Folks, I got a little bit more real quick, but we only have 12 minutes on our camera, so give me one moment. So we're going to wrap this up right. We're starting to wrap this up. I know this is going to be a long episode, but folks, I'm really passionate about this. Let's talk about the seventh thing of his last sayings, and that is a trusting word. This comes from Luke chapter 23, verse 46. I know you're going like, man, Clayton, you're going through the whole thing. And I'm going like, yeah, because this is really important, folks. And it says, Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last. Now, you might be asking me, Clayton, what in the world are you talking about right now. And that is, folks, this is the hope of the world. One guy, he was a baby. Then he grew up. He was fully God and fully man. And he had to be crucified on a cross because that was the only way that we would ever be able to pay for our sins at all. That was the only way. Just like the only way to get into heaven is through Christ, is through God. No one comes to the Father except through me. And in Galatians chapter 6, verse 20, there's another piece of the puzzle here in this. And man, folks, it is just really cool to just see what is going on throughout this, this time, the submission that happens in this. Also, the resurrection and the burial. You have the burial happen later that day. He rises out of that tomb. He rolled that stone away, folks. And he resurrected. He beat death. That's what Jesus did. He beat death for you. He loves you so much that he beat death, which is in Matthew 27, verses 57 through 61, Mark 15, verses 42 through 47, Luke chapter 23, verses 50 through 54, John chapter 19, verses 38 through 42. Then you have the witnesses with the disciples coming and seeing, the ladies seeing this and going, telling the disciples. What a story. What a story. But the main message of this podcast is, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Because, folks, there is only one way you get into heaven, and that is a relationship with Jesus Christ. If you do not, you will go to a place of separation and eternal torment called hell. Not to scare you, but that's the truth. Folks, this Easter, let this not be a tradition of going to the church, which I hope you do go to the church. But look at this Easter story again and go, look at what Jesus did for me on that cross. Look what he did for me. Look what he did to pay off my sins. Look how much he loved me to pay off those sins. He did that for you to have an eternal home with him and his Father in heaven. That's why he did this. And, meanwhile, he also beat death while doing it. That's pretty stinking cool. Folks, that is the Easter story right there. Folks, I highly encourage y'all to head to church this Sunday, or whatever day you can check out your churches. Of course, on the Chill with Clayton page, I have my church's times. We have a Spanish service. We have a sensory-friendly service. We also have a service out in another part of town as well that you can go check out as well. Folks, I hope y'all enjoyed today's Easter episode. All I ask for you this Easter is to have a relationship with Jesus Christ and to remember that this Easter and what he did for you on that cross. What he did for you. Folks, we're going to wrap it up. Remember, y'all, don't mess with Texas. Keep Jesus first. God bless y'all. Bye con Dios amigos. Everybody, I love y'all. Have a happy Easter. And we will see y'all later. YEEHAW! Happy Easter, folks. Have a blessed day.